Hello and welcome to Palette Knives Out Artcast. And today's video is made specifically for fossil distance learning, but we did make it public so anyone can watch along too because it's pretty fun to do. We're going to be painting these adorable penguins, and it's just a little wood cutout with a scarf. So I'm going to take that off. Those of you who have your kits, you'll have your penguin and you have 4 colors. We don't use much paint at all. In fact, the kits that you got probably have way more paint left over, so you can have fun with it and paint some canvas or paper. It's acrylic paint. You also have 2 brushes. We just need little guys for this particular project, so that's good. And I'm going to guide you through all the steps. So it is acrylic paint. It will dry nice and fast, but you will want to make sure it's completely dry before you tie your little scarf back on, because this is made out of fabric, and acrylic paint and fabric don't really like each other. It's really hard to get out of fabric. So you do have your little apron, you can put that on. You'll want to have a cup of water and a paper towel just to clean your brushes off and dry them off. And let's go ahead and get started. So let's take a quick look at the original. I'll take this guy's scarf off. So it's very simple, and I made it a little less simple by giving some fun blue shading in here, and I'll teach you how to do that. Different things that you can add to your penguin. If you have some red, you could put little blush cheeks. I like to do that a lot of times. Maybe make it really light pink by mixing white and red, and paint little circles right about here and here on either side of the beak. That's a cute way to do it. You can give your penguin eyelashes. You could paint a little bow tie that you can have on in addition to the scarf. Whatever you want to do. You can add little hearts in here. I'm just trying to think of other things you could do, but I'll go ahead and teach you through the basics. So let's take our, actually I'll show you real quick. So you can see it's got some engraving, which is kind of nice because then we know where to put the features. So let's go ahead and take our largest brush, which isn't very big. It's about 1/4 inch wide. You can go ahead and dip it in your water cup, kind of swish it around across the bottom of the cup really lightly, dry it off. And I'm actually going to start with the white part. So go ahead and apply some paint here. I like to use the thin edge of the brush too and get into this groove, but you don't have to. And if you overlap into the area that's supposed to be black, like I just did, that's not a problem at all because it's going to get black painted over it. So I don't even really try to not get paint in that area because it doesn't matter at all. So we're just starting at the top. I'm going to work my way down. The paint on wood dries really fast, which in some ways I kind of like. Sometimes having your paint dry too fast can be difficult, but this one's okay. The little grooves that go around the beak area, you can paint those white or they can be orange later. I'm thinking it might actually be a good idea to paint them white because painting them orange later, we can make a real mess. So I'm using the thin edge of my brush to get the white down in there. And what I mean by a real mess is it's really hard to delicately get in there with orange without getting a whole bunch of orange outside of the beak, which we probably wouldn't want because it would look like he's wearing orange lipstick or something. Got it smeared all over. Or he was eating some orange candy and got it smeared all over his face. We'll probably do a second coat of this color. So just focus on doing a nice thin coat of paint. Like I can see my brush strokes. If I hold this up to the camera, you can kind of see the wood grain through it. So that's good. I want it to be a nice thin coat to start. Hopefully everybody is having a good January. It's been about a month since Christmas. It's crazy. Time flies. That means we only have 11 months left till Christmas. Again. I think I love Christmas, but I'll let it wait a little bit. It ends up being a really busy time of year, but in a fun way. And I know most of you guys with Fossil are in Oregon, just like me. And hopefully you're enjoying the sunshine, depending on where you live in Oregon. We've been having a decent amount of sunshine. In fact, it's kind of strange to not have a lot of rain. But I know November and December were pretty rainy months, so I guess it's giving us a break. Okay, so I have one full coat on there. It's very thin. You can see the wood grain, or not wood grain, but the wood color through it. And I want to get another coat on there so that it looks really bright white and opaque like this one does. So it should be dry enough. By the time you get down here, it should be close to dry enough to start right back up at the top with a second coat of paint. So I'm going to try that out first and see if it's sticking. That's the main thing, is acrylic paint. If the first coat is too wet, the second coat actually won't stick to it, and it just kind of everything just pushes around. But it looks like this is working great, which is good. These little wood cutouts are pretty fun to paint, and you can find them from different craft shops online. Etsy, that's where a lot of times I'll buy them. Let's see, I'm trying to think of what I've done. I've done a snowman, I've done a Santa, I have a truck with a tree in it. You can see I've done a lot of winter and Christmas themed. But they even make bunnies for Easter. All kinds of fun shapes. And the acrylic paint works great. So I'm just working my way down here. One thing that's kind of cool too with acrylic paint is sometimes I'll be working on a painting and I'll be in a bit of a hurry and needing something to dry really fast, and a hairdryer works great. So if you have a parent who can help you hair dry in whatever it is you're painting with acrylic paint, it just takes really about 30 seconds. Because it doesn't have to be 100% dry. Just 99% dry. All right, that's looking better. More the way I want it. This is something that you can continue doing. You can continue painting coats of white on it, but you do want to just make sure that it dries completely between each coat so that you're not just pushing paint around. But what we're going to do next is we'll start adding the shading. It's kind of an ice blue that I work from the outside edges working inward. So again, don't worry about getting paint into the area that's going to be black later, because that's going to be covered up. What I want to do is, you don't need to wash your brush. Just scrape a little white aside and use the corner of your brush and pick up. See, I have just a tiny little dot of blue on there. I'll hold that up to the camera. There we go. I have to move in reverse compared to the screen I'm looking at. Yeah, just a tiny dot of blue. Let's see how that works out. We want a really pale ice blue, so it's going to be really light. Probably much lighter than you think. I'm going to start with this and see how that looks. Now, every time I mix paint, I end up with a big glob. You can see if I turn the brush, you see there's a big glob on there. That's too much to start with on this. I need that to focus. There we go. And so what I'll do is I'll just swipe it off on my paper towel or my palette. Now, you guys have the little plastic palettes, and again, I forgot to bring one home, which is where I filmed the video for these. And they're still at the warehouse where I shipped the kits from. So yeah, you can use your little paint palette to mix this. This is the only color we mix, actually, so you don't have to worry about anything else mixing wise. Let's take a look at how we're gonna do it again. Here we go. He's coming up. So his belly and face are white, but it's the blue around the edges. And so I wiped most of the paint off my brush, and I'll just come in. Let me get that to zoom in again. Come on, camera. I'm at the point where it's like, is it blurry or is it my eyesight? So I'm going to take the blue, the light blue color, and work it in around the edge. Now I can see that's pretty light, and I think that I actually need to mix a little more blue in there. So I'm going to do that real quick. I think this is, well, that's maybe a little too dark. So a lot of times when you're going from too light to too dark or too dark to too light, you might go overkill at first. To wipe my brush off. And I'll show you a fun trick. So I'm going to work it inwards. My brush is running out of paint. You can kind of start feeling your brush drag a little bit. You can paint this in the groove. But I want to blend this. See how it has like a kind of a harder edge where it goes from blue to white? I want to blend that better so that it's more like this guy where it's blended in around the edges. So I'll show you how I do that. I'm gonna wash the brush and dry it off really good, and then just pick up a tiny bit of white. So there you can see just a itty bitty amount of white. I'm gonna hold this up to the camera so you can see, and I just go right at, I kind of just feather this in at the edge. So slightly overlapping the blue. And it's amazing how it just really softens that hard edge. And that's basically what I do around the whole penguin. So I'll work some more. Letting the brush run out of paint. Sometimes when your brush runs out of paint, it already is blended nicely. But a lot of times you might have to go back with a little white. See, I didn't even wash my brush that time because I had such a small amount of paint. But going back with the white and just sort of softening the edge. It almost takes on kind of a, I don't know, almost like an airbrushed look. A lot of times I might revisit an older area again. You might be thinking you want your whole penguin blue, and that would be okay too. That's one thing I like about art. There's really no rules. I mean, there's certain rules of like that help your painting look better for sure, but as far as like color, if you want a blue penguin, you can paint a blue penguin. If you want to use these colors and paint an orange penguin with blue legs, you can. Just going back to a little white and showing you what I did earlier, where I'm sort of just softening the edge here, so you can see that's a really hard edge. So you guys get to learn a few blending techniques. It's always when you're going back to blend the two colors together, you always want to use very little paint because you can always add more. If you add too much from the very start, you got to figure out where it's all going to go. It's just something you learn as you paint a lot. It gets easier and easier. So again, I am kind of packing this blue into the grooves too. I think it'll look better once we have this whole front side or face and belly area done. So there, I've got that hard line. I need that blended like this side, so I'll show you again. Just wash the brush, dry it off. Sometimes I'll just fold my paper towel over the brush and pull that out, and that dries it really good. Then pick up a little tiny bit of white and go over the seam where those two colors meet. So right over the seam where the blue and white meet. And then take a look and see, do you need any more white in here? I feel like, yeah, I could use a little more white in this central area. Just do a little bit of paint on the brush at a time, because again, if you put too much, you're going to end up overlapping into your nice blue shading you just did. So I just put a little on the brush at a time and work my way from the center outward. I'm going to check and see if I have, of course I have some red paint here. I think I have just about every color here. So let me grab some. I'm going to show you what it would look like if you do have red paint at home, which I know a lot of you guys probably do from past kits. And maybe you do some painting at home sometimes. But let's see, I've got this little container of red. I'll find a brush. And you really only need a tiny bit. And we want to soften that by adding white. Otherwise, they're going to be really rosy cheeks. So again, this is just an extra add-on optional item. I thought maybe I'll do that just for fun. And clean the brush off really good. Let's mix quite a bit of white with this. If you have some red laying around. Or even if you maybe you have a bottle with pink already, then you're set. Okay, so I have quite a lot on the brush. I'm actually going to switch and go down to my little brush for this. Go ahead and dip it in the water. Dry it off really good so your brush is just a little bit damp. And just dip the tip of the bristles in pink if you're doing this. And I like to start with a little dot and just sort of tap it into a circle as I work my way out so you can kind of see here. I can make that bigger. Actually, looking at it, I feel like maybe it's not quite red enough. So let's try again. Grab a little more red. And this time don't make it quite as pink. I'm going to use my little bit bigger brush to mix because mixing with that little tiny brush can kind of mess up your bristles a little bit. I like to keep these nice and sharp because they're for detail. So let's try this again. There we go. So see, I start with one little dot and then just work my way out. And while that's still wet, I can leave it like that. It's funny, it looks like pink eyes right now. I'm going to clean my larger brush and make sure you dry it really, really well. And just sort of softly bat at that paint a little bit. And you can even swirl it into more of a circle. I think mine's getting a little out of control. Mine was maybe a little bit too, I think I had too much water on my brush. It was kind of wiping it away. And you can even use your finger and just very lightly smudge that around. This is just extra credit. There we go. Okay, it looks very weird right now, but when we get all the eyes and everything done, it's gonna look way better. So let's start working on the rest of the penguin. Now is a great time to, well, now's a great time to we'll paint the feet. And you can take orange, unless you want to use blue. There are some penguins with blue feet, or some kind of bird. I remember seeing them before. And you just need a little bit of paint, because this is definitely going to be better with a second coat, although it is going on nice and bright orange, which is pretty cool. And go ahead and cover those feet. And I'm going to turn the brush, use the thin edge, and just get that right in the groove area too. So one thing I've done with these cutout shapes before, now I know one side has these nice ridges that are already grooved in there, or engraved, whatever they are, which is cool. But a lot of times I painted the back too, so you can have two penguins. Like maybe one day you have a normal color penguin, and maybe one day you have a pink penguin with green polka dots. You can do however you want. These do freestand. They stand up like that. You just prop them up on their feet. And so, yeah, you can have double-sided. Why not? Just make sure this side's completely dry before you work on the flip side. The nice thing is, without having the little engraved parts, you can turn it into any kind of bird. Although it is very penguin-shaped, but I think it would be cute as a little bluebird, maybe. Or a robin. And you get to dictate how it looks. Yay, that's always fun. Okay, so I'm gonna wash and dry the brush really well. And we are going to think for a second here. I do actually think right now would be a good time. I was going to go right to the black, but I think right now would be a good time to get a coat of paint on the beak itself. How about we use this little brush just to be safe? The reason I want to do this coat now is because I want to be able to come back and do a second coat of orange on here. And if you get some in the little grooved in area, that's totally fine. In fact, on my original, I think I painted the orange in. Well, I left it brown, actually. That's funny. I didn't notice. I thought it, as it was sitting there, I was kind of just glancing across the top of it, and I thought it was painted orange in the grooved area. Let's see what that looks like. You'd have to be very careful. I remember I talked about this earlier, how it can end up looking like he's been eating orange candy. But this tiny little brush is so pointy, and if you're very careful and keep your brush strokes really light pressure, pretend you're painting some little tiny china cup or something that you don't want to mess up on. You can very carefully go in around the edges of the beak and get right into the engraved area. And if you accidentally get into the white part of your penguin, let it dry completely, because if you try to correct it now, you're going to end up with peach on the face. But let it dry completely and then go back with a little white and touch up any areas that you need to touch up. Let's do a quick little look at that. You can see it's not perfect, but it needs a second coat of paint, and it still looks funny with those pink blotches on the face. Now I think we can officially go for the black, if that's the color you want to use for your penguin body. So going back to that larger brush, black paint, I'm just going to start out here in a safe area, which is right on the edge of the wing. After this video is over, if you want to bring the paint around the edges, you totally can. You'll notice it's a little bit rougher surface, so you might have to put a little bit more paint on there than you do on the front. The front's really smooth. And the back, it's just those edges are kind of rough cut. So the thing I like about painting with flat brushes like this is you can turn the brush. So see how you can turn it one way and you work with the wide side of the brush, or you can turn it this way and you have this nice thin edge. And I like to use that thin edge around areas where I have to be a little more careful, like right around here. Now, if you accidentally paint onto the white part, don't worry about that. The nice thing about acrylic paint is once everything's dry, you can paint right over any mistakes you make. And that's why a lot of people like acrylic paint, because it's very easy to do that. You just, you need to make sure that whatever you're fixing, everything just dries completely. And like, let's say I got a little black in here. Don't worry about it. Keep working around the edges. Try not to think about it. And then when you go back, it should be dry. Check and make sure it's dry. And then you can paint some white over the top of it. And then you'll need to let that dry. And you'll probably have to do another 1 or 2 coats to completely cover the spot. Because painting light color back over dark color can be a bit of a challenge, and it requires a little more paint. So I'm going to turn my project, because I find it's sometimes easier to reach certain areas if I do that. So feel free to do that too. Might as well work my way up here around the head. So over the years of painting, I've been painting for, well, since I was 16, and that was a very long time ago. I've been working with acrylic paint since I was 16, starting in high school, and then I just stuck with it. I worked with oil paint for a while and went back to acrylic paint for teaching. But I found there's a whole lot of different types of black paint. And this particular brand, which is Blick brand, I happen to love because it dries shiny. Some of them aren't real potent black, And some of them dry a little too matte finish, which is where it's the opposite of shiny. And I like it to have a little bit of shine to it, like not too much, because you can see this doesn't have a huge amount of shine, but here I tilt it, you can see there is a little bit of glossiness to it. And so that is what I like about the Blick brand. It's a line called Blick Acrylic, and it's great for student painters. So if you are interested in getting to know more about acrylic painting, I highly recommend that brand of paint, because it's just fluid enough. It's not super duper thick, and starting out with really thick paint can be a little tough for new painters. I learned that the hard way when I first started teaching classes in a live studio. I started out with really thick, high-end paint that was as thick as frosting, because I knew that's what I had worked with. But then I had to keep having the students water it down because it was just too thick for them to work with as beginners. I'm making my way around here, just being careful around the edge. See how I'm using the flat edge of my brush and just very carefully going around. The nice thing about this black too is that it just needs one coat. Penguins are very cute. And we have them here at the Oregon Zoo, which I know a lot of you guys have probably been to, and you've seen them, and we all know the same thing. The penguin cages just happen to really stink really bad, unfortunately. And it's because they get fed raw fish, and I'm sure the cages are cleaned out all the time, but that stink is just always there. That's okay. I guess they can get away with it because they're so cute. It's a careful area right here. This is probably the area that's the most stressful. It's such a tiny area, and you've got color on both sides that you don't really want to overlap. So just take your time. You guys are we're doing great time-wise. You guys are gonna rock through this, so take your time. Work very carefully. Use a small brush if you need to. You've got one. There. Okay. It's looking pretty good. Just gonna wash my brush off really good. I think I'm actually pretty much done with this flat brush we've been using, our bigger brush. Now, if you did do the little rosy cheeks, if you feel like a second coat might be good, you can very carefully do it. I know I'm using my bigger brush, but I think I like it a little better for this. I just sort of blot it around. These don't have to be smooth edge circles. They can be sort of hazy. Like that. He's blushing. Or he has really bad case of pink eye. No, we don't want that. We want to make him cute. Now, the cool thing about, again, acrylic paint, if this dries and you realize, you know, I really wish I hadn't put those on there. What were you trying to get me to do, Jenny? Why did you have me do that? You could paint right over them with the white again. And you might have to shade in some blue again, but you know how to do that already. You can rewind the video at the very end if you want. But let's proceed on. How about, you know, I said that was the last time we used this brush, but I forgot. I want to do a second coat of paint on these feet. So that's the orange color. Should just take you a minute. They're so small. And I'm just pulling towards myself here. And if you want to give it toenails, by all means, Give it toenails. Let this dry. Paint its toenails whatever color you want. Black, pink, blue, whatever you're thinking. I do want to paint the beak with another coat of orange, but because it's so small, I'm going to use my little brush. And just really carefully. If you want to give your penguin a belly button, feel free. In the paint world, you can create your own character. Even one with pink eye. No, we don't want that. I just can't unsee it until I put the eyes on, which we're going to do next. So finish up your second coat on the beak, and I'll guide you through painting the eyes, which are really tiny. If you want to make bigger, if you really love anime type art, you can absolutely like chibi art. Give this guy big eyes. This is really cute with tiny eyes too, so you decide what you want to do. And if you have the blush spots, the eyes can actually go on top of that if needed, depending on where you place them. So I'm going to use my little tiny brush. I picked up just a little teeny dot of black. Let's see there. Get in there. You can see how small that is. And first I want to place the eye. So I think I'm going to try to line it up with the edge of the beak on either side and just come up here. So I'm doing them really small to start, just so that I get them lined up right. And let me hold that up. You can see how itty bitty they are. So now I'm going to make them bigger. I'm trying to think what I would compare this to. I can't think of anything that's this small that you guys would know. Because they're smaller than a pencil eraser. There. Cute. If you want to do eyelashes, maybe do like 3 eyelashes in the outer corner. Absolutely can do that. Right now, I think it will look funny before we put highlights in it, because then it kind of looks like the pink blush spots are part of the eyes. But I think adding the highlights to the eyes is going to help that out. Let's go ahead and put some nostrils on. See those itty bitty teeny nostrils? They are the tiniest amount of paint on the very tip of your little tiny brush. So just poke it in and pick up the tiniest bit you can. Maybe dab it off on your palette to make sure you have extra knocked off there. And I just put 2 little dots that are sort of evenly spaced here. I'll hold that up. Now I am just going to touch up one little spot I noticed on mine. Right on his little widow's peak there. Let's have a look. We're going to do the highlights in the eyes, but you can see with and without the blush spots on. If you don't like the blush spots, now would be the time to paint over the top of them. Actually, after the eyes dry a little bit, because you don't want to smear the black all over. But I'm going to go ahead and, just like when we painted these little nose holes, make sure your brush is clean, that you have all the black off of it. I'm going to do the same thing where I pick up just the tiniest little dot of white on the brush. So you see that right on the tip of the bristles. I'll hold this up so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to do a dot of white up here in the upper right corner of each eye. You might need to re-dip the tip of your bristle for the second dot. And this one goes down in the lower left corner. So you have 2 dots that are just at an angle from each other. How cute. Yeah. And that was the last step. We actually did everything, unless you want to go in and paint some toenails or anything else you want to do. How about I show you eyelashes? Since this one's got the blush spots, maybe it'd be cute with eyelashes. So again, you'll want to, one thing I like to do is wash the brush, dry it off, and then I use the tip of my fingers and just sort of pull this into a little point. So it's a bit more pointy than just pulled right out of the water and dried off on the towel. And then I like to just dip the very tip of the bristles and pick up the tiniest little tick of black. There you can see, very small amount. And I'll hold this up so that you can see. My zooming tool, it actually got left at our other video studio. That's why I'm having to do the old school type where I hold this up. And I'll just do a couple quick little eyelashes on each corner. How cute is that? So cute. There we go. They're a couple. And oh, it looks like they're holding wings. That's adorable. And then if you had any issues with the orange mouth overlapping into the white, I did notice a couple spots on mine where it looked like it was eating orange candy and got smeared all over the mouth. I'll just come in and really carefully, using the smallest amount of paint on the end of the brush, just come in and sort of touch up around the edges as needed. And then you're done, other than putting the scarf on. You can repaint this as many times as you want. If you get it all done and you love it for a month, but next month you decide you want to do a completely different color penguin, or maybe you realize, you know, I really wish I'd done the face different, or left the eyelashes off, or put the blush on, whatever you want to do. You can paint over it again. Just make sure everything's dry. Before you put the scarf on yours, make sure everything's dry. Mine is pretty much dry, and I just did a little tie, and oh my goodness, that's really cute. And I've got one for this one too. And then you've got a fun little winter ornament, or something you can display in your house or your bedroom or wherever you want to put it. But that is all, and we'll see you for the next project. I'll have to figure out something fun for us to do. I'm always open to suggestions, so you can communicate maybe through your teacher, and they can communicate through me. I love getting suggestions from you guys or any of my paint students as to what we want to do next, because then sometimes I run out of ideas. So this was great. I had a lot of fun, and we'll see you next time. Bye.